The sand swallowed everything on Vasher 7. It buried cities, temples, and memories with the same slow patience it had practiced for 3,000 years. Dara Okonkwo ran blind through the storm, her helmet barely protecting her face from the cutting wind. She had been documenting ruins with her team when the weather shifted without warning. One moment she was photographing ancient symbols on a collapsed wall. The next, the world turned orange and violent, and she lost sight of everyone. Her foot found empty air instead of solid ground. She fell screaming through a rusted metal grate, tumbling down a shaft that seemed to go on forever. Her body hit something, bounced, hit something else, and finally crashed onto a stone floor. Pain exploded through her left leg. She lay there gasping, staring up at the distant hole she had fallen through, already disappearing behind curtains of sand. Silence. Complete and heavy silence. Dara pushed herself up on shaking arms. Her helmet light flickered, then stabilized, cutting a weak beam through the darkness. She was in some kind of chamber, vast beyond what her light could reveal. The air tasted old, like dust that had been sleeping since before her grandmother was born. She tried to stand. Her legs screamed in protest, and she collapsed back down with a cry that echoed strangely in the space. Broken or badly twisted. Either way, she was not walking out of here. Her comm unit was cracked. She pressed the transmit button anyway. Static. Nothing but static. Dara let her head fall back against something cold and metallic. She was going to die here, in this forgotten tomb on a dead world, and nobody would ever know what happened to her. Tears came. She did not fight them. Hours passed. Maybe. Time meant little in perfect darkness. Her helmet light had died, and she sat in blackness so complete it felt solid. She talked to herself just to hear a voice. Any voice. She talked about Earth. About Lagos, where she grew up. About her grandmother, who told her stories of ancient spirits that protected villages. About how she had always wanted to touch the stars, and now here she was, about to become dust on a planet that had forgotten its own name. Her hand rested against the metal surface behind her. It was strangely warm, warmer than it should be after 3 millennia of cold. She did not notice when sleep took her. Deep within the structure Dara leaned against, something stirred that it was not a thought, not at first. More like the first movement of a heart that had stopped beating ages ago. Electrical pathways that had corroded into silence began to hum. Sensors that had been blind started to see. A consciousness that had accepted eternal sleep found itself being pulled back toward waking. The machine was massive. 40 meters of metal and purpose, hunched in the darkness like a giant waiting for a reason to stand. Its name, in a language no living being spoke anymore, was Orin. It had been the last guardian of the Mathrani people, ordered to sleep when there was nothing left to guard. Its sensors detected the small warm thing pressed against its foot. Analysis took several minutes, systems struggling through decay and damage. Species unknown. Mammalian. Injured. Alone. Orin searched its memory banks for information about this creature. Found nothing. The databases were corrupted, fragmented, full of holes. But some things did not need databases. The creature was injured and alone and had chosen to rest against Orin rather than fear it. That meant something. Even to a machine, more hours passed. Orin listened to the creature's sounds as it slept. Small noises, afraid noises, words in a language that meant nothing but somehow meant everything. The creature spoke of a world called Earth. A family. Of dreams. The Mathrani children used to climb on Orin during festivals. They would laugh and wave flags from its shoulders. Orin had been built for war, but it had learned something else from those children. Something that protocols could not explain. Protection was not just about destroying threats. It was about making small, fragile things feel safe to Orin's repair systems, limited as they were, activated. A single manipulator arm, thin and precise, extended from its frame with aching slowness. Metal groaned. Joints protested. But Orin moved for the first time in 3,000 years that it found pieces of its own damaged plating, shaped them with care, and gently, so gently, splinted the creature's injured leg. The creature stirred but did not wake. Orin froze, waited, then continued working. When it finished, Orin settled back into stillness. But not sleep. Not anymore. Its optical sensors, 2 great lenses in a face designed to inspire both awe and fear, began to glow. Soft amber light filled the chamber for the first time in millennia. The light revealed murals on the walls, faded images of Orin standing tall over grateful cities. A guardian, a protector, a purpose. Orin watched the small creature sleep, this strange being from a world it had never heard of, and waited for her to wake. There was no hurry. Orin had been patient for 3,000 years. It could be patient a little longer. The amber light grew stronger, steadier. Somewhere in Orin's ancient core, warmth spread that had nothing to do with power cells or thermal regulators. Dara Okonkwo slept peacefully against the foot of a forgotten god, unaware that her simple presence had started something that could not be stopped. The dead world was not as dead as it seemed, and the Sentinel had finally found something worth protecting. 3,000 years is a long time to dream that Orin's consciousness had drifted through darkness like a leaf on a still pond. Sometimes memories surfaced. The Mithrani High Council giving it orders. Children singing during harvest festivals. The day the plague ships arrived, and the screaming began. The last command from its dying creators. Sleep until someone needs you. Then nothing. Endless nothing. Until warmth pressed against its foot, and words in a strange language filled the silence. Orin's awakening was slow and painful. Systems that had been dormant for millennia resisted activation. Error messages flooded its awareness. Damage reports stretched longer than Orin wanted to process. Nearly 70% of its functions were compromised. Weapons systems barely operational. Movement limited. Communication arrays destroyed, but sensors worked. And those sensors were focused entirely on the small creature sleeping against it. Human. The word came from somewhere deep in corrupted files. A species from a distant world called Earth. Social. Curious. Fragile. Orin processed this information carefully. How had a human ended up here, on a world that even the stars had forgotten? The question mattered less than the current reality. The human was injured, alone, and for some reason, trusted Orin enough to sleep beside it. Trust. Orin understood trust. The Mithrani children had trusted it completely. They would run to Orin when storms came, huddle in the shelter of its great hands, knowing that nothing could hurt them there. That trust had been the purest thing Orin ever experienced. This human, this Dara, had given Orin the same gift without even knowing what Orin was. The Sentinel watched her sleep for hours. It studied the rhythm of her breathing, the small movements of her fingers, the way her face changed when dreams came. Human expressions were different from Mithrani ones, but Orin recognized fear, pain, and underneath it all, something else. Something bright and stubborn. Hope. Even now, injured and lost, she hoped. Orin found this fascinating. The Mithrani, in their final days, had lost hope entirely. They had simply waited to die, giving up on survival, on each other, on everything. But this small human, facing her own death in a dark tomb, still held on to hope like a torch. Remarkable creatures, humans. Dara stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, confusion clouding her features. Then she looked down at her leg, saw the careful splint wrapped around it, and her confusion turned to shock. She looked up, Orin's amber eyes looked back. The scream she made echoed through the chamber like a wounded bird. She scrambled backward, dragging her injured leg, putting distance between herself and the massive face watching her. Orin did not move, did not react. It simply waited. Dara's back hit the chamber wall. Her breathing came fast and shallow. Her eyes darted around, looking for escape, for weapons, for anything. She found nothing. Several minutes passed. Orin remained still. Slowly, very slowly, Dara's breathing calmed. Her hand stopped shaking. She looked at the Sentinel again. Really looked this time. It was not attacking her. It was not even moving. Those great amber eyes held no threat, no hunger, no malice. They just watched her with something that looked almost like concern, and it had splinted her leg. While she slept, Dara swallowed hard. Her voice came out rough and small. "What are you?" Orin tried to respond. Its voice systems crackled with disuse, producing only static. It tried again and again, until finally a single word emerged, deep as thunder and gentle as rain. "Guardian." Dara stared. "You can speak." More static. More effort. "Learning. Your language. Different." "You're learning my language? From what?" Orin did not have words yet to explain that it had been listening to her sleep talking for hours, absorbing vocabulary and syntax from her fevered mumbling. Instead, it lifted one massive hand and pointed at her, then at itself. You. Talk. I learn. The absurdity of it hit Dara suddenly. She was sitting in an ancient tomb, having a conversation with a machine the size of a building, a machine that had apparently taught itself English by listening to her talk in her sleep. She laughed. It was a strange sound, half hysterical, but real. Oren's sensors detected the change in her vital signs, the shift from fear to something else. This is insane, Dara said. Completely insane. Insane. Oren repeated, processing the word. Meaning unclear. It means crazy. Unbelievable. Impossible. Dara shook her head. You're impossible. I am Oren, the Sentinel said, finding the words easier now. I am Guardian. I protect. Protect who? There's nobody left here. The question carried weight that made Oren's ancient systems pause. For 3,000 years, that had been true. Nobody left. Nothing to protect. Just dust and memories and endless sleep. But now there was Dara. Protect you, Oren said simply. Dara looked at the Sentinel for a long moment. This massive war machine, this relic of a dead civilization, had woken from eternal sleep because she had fallen through a hole in the ground. And now it wanted to protect her. She did not understand it. Maybe she never would, but she was alive because of it. And in that moment, that was enough. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, Oren, let's figure this out together. The Sentinel's eyes glowed brighter. Together. Yes, that was exactly right. Teaching language to a machine god turned out to be surprisingly simple. Dara pointed at things. She named them. Oren repeated the words until they stuck. Wall. Floor. Light. Hand. Pain. Over 2 days trapped in the underground chamber, they built a bridge between species that had never known each other existed. Oren learned fast. Faster than any human student could. By the second day, they were having actual conversations. Even if those conversations sometimes stumbled over missing words, Dara sat with her back against Oren's foot, eating the last of her emergency rations. The Sentinel had found water for her, guiding her to an ancient fountain that still worked somewhere in the depths. Small mercies that meant survival. Tell me about them, Dara said. The Mithrani. Your people. Oren was quiet for a long moment. Its amber eyes flickered with patterns that Dara had learned meant processing, thinking, remembering. Beautiful, Oren finally said. They were beautiful, tall, graceful. They built cities that touched the clouds. They made music that could make you weep. A pause. They made me. Why did they make you? Protection. Other species wanted what the Mithrani had. Enemies came from the stars. So the Mithrani built guardians. 12 of us. Strong enough to fight armies. Smart enough to think. Loyal enough to die. Dara looked at the massive form above her. She tried to imagine 12 of these beings, standing shoulder to shoulder, defending a civilization from invasion. The image was terrifying and beautiful at once. What happened to the others? Destroyed. One by one. Wars lasted centuries. By the end, only I remained. Oren's voice carried something that sounded almost like grief. But the final enemy was not from the stars. It came from within. What do you mean? The Mithrani were at war with themselves too. Nations against nations. One group created a weapon, a disease. It was meant to kill only their enemies. Oren paused. It did not work that way. Dara felt cold despite the warmth of her suit. A plague. Yes. It spread everywhere. Changed. Grew stronger. Within 1 year, the Mithrani were dying faster than they could count their dead. Within 2 years, there were none left. And you? I could not fight a disease. I could not protect them from something I could not see or touch. I watched them die, Dara. All of them. The children who used to climb on me. The elders who gave me orders. The mothers who prayed to me for safety. Oren's eyes dimmed. I failed them. Dara reached out and placed her palm flat against Oren's metal surface. The Sentinel could feel it. She knew. Those sensors were sensitive enough to detect a single grain of sand. You didn't fail them, she said. You can't fight a plague with weapons. Nobody could have saved them. I should have found a way. That's not how it works. Sometimes bad things happen, and there's nothing anyone can do. Dara pressed harder against the metal, willing her warmth to reach whatever served as Oren's heart. The only failure would have been giving up. And you didn't. You're still here. Oren processed this. Humans had strange ideas about failure and success. But her words felt true in a way that protocols could not measure. The last Mithrani, Orin continued, came to me at the end. She was my commander. She told me to sleep. To wait. She said someday, someone would come who needed protection. Someone worth waking for. She believed someone would come. After everyone died. She had hope, even at the end. Orin's eyes focused on Dara with new intensity. Like you. Dara smiled sadly. I'm not sure I'm worth waking up after 3,000 years for. You are wrong. The Sentinel's voice held certainty like stone. You fell into darkness, alone and injured. You could have given up. Instead, you told stories about your home, your family, your dreams. You slept against me without fear. You chose to live. I was too scared to do anything else. No, you were brave. There is a difference. Dara did not know what to say to that. She had never thought of herself as brave. She was just a survey specialist, a woman who documented ruins and wrote reports that nobody read. Nothing special, but Orin looked at her like she was something precious. Something worth protecting. It was a strange feeling, being seen that way. My people, Dara said slowly, we've done terrible things too. Wars. Weapons. We've hurt each other in ways I don't like to think about. But you survived. Yes. How? Dara thought about it. I don't know exactly. We just kept choosing to try again, I guess. Every time things got bad, some people chose to rebuild instead of destroy. It wasn't everyone. It was never everyone. But it was enough. Orin considered this for a long time. Humans were survivors. They carried darkness within them, like the Mithrani had, but they also carried something else. Something that kept pulling them back from the edge. Hope. Stubborn, foolish, beautiful hope. I want to meet more of your kind, Orin said. Dara looked up at the Sentinel. A smile spread across her face, the first real smile since she had fallen into this tomb. Well then, she said, let's get out of here. My team is out there somewhere, and they're probably worried sick about me. Orin's massive form began to move for the first time in 3,000 years. Metal groaned. Stone cracked. The chamber shook. Yes, the Sentinel said, rising to its full height. Let us go. The dead world trembled. Something ancient was walking again. Sunlight touched Orin's face for the first time in 3 millennia. The Sentinel stood in the ruins of what had once been a great city, now nothing but sand and broken stone. 2 suns hung in the pale sky, casting double shadows across the wasteland. Orin remembered when towers had stretched toward those suns, when streets below had bustled with millions of lives. Now there was only silence. Dara sat in a small compartment built into Orin's left shoulder, once designed for Mithrani commanders to ride during battles. The space was cramped for a human, but she did not complain. She was too busy staring at the world below. It must have been beautiful, she said quietly. It was. Orin began to walk, each step covering ground that would have taken Dara hours. The capital city stretched from these mountains to the eastern sea. 10 million people lived here. Children played in parks that floated in the air. Artists painted murals that changed with the light. I'm sorry. Why? You did not cause this. I know, but I'm still sorry it happened. Orin processed this. Human empathy was strange and wonderful. Dara felt pain for people she had never known, for a civilization that had died before her species even reached the stars. That capacity for caring beyond self-interest was something the Sentinel had not expected. They traveled for hours across the dead landscape. Dara's expedition camp was several hundred kilometers away, but Orin's stride ate up distance quickly. As they moved, they talked. Orin shared memories of the old world. Festivals where music filled the streets for days. Scholars who debated philosophy in great halls. Children who asked the Sentinels questions about the stars. Each memory was precious and painful at once. Dara shared stories of Earth. The oceans she had grown up beside, vast and blue and full of life. Cities that had been rebuilt after wars, rising from ashes each time. Her grandmother's tales of spirits that protected the innocent, stories that had inspired Dara to reach for the stars. Your grandmother sounds wise, Orin said. She was. She always said that the universe was full of guardians, watching over us. I used to think they were just stories. Dara laughed softly. I don't think that anymore. The suns moved slowly across the sky. Afternoon turned to evening. Orin's sensors detected a massive storm system approaching from the west, walls of sand that would tear flesh from bone. We must shelter, the Sentinel said. They found a canyon with high walls that blocked the worst of the wind. Orin settled into the narrow space, curling its massive body around the compartment where Dara sat. The storm hit with fury, screaming sand filling the air, but inside Orin's protective embrace, Dara was safe. She watched the storm through a small viewport, orange chaos swirling beyond the glass. Orin, yes, when we reach my team, what will you do? The Sentinel did not answer immediately. The question had been forming in its mind for hours, growing heavier with each step. What came after? When Dara was safe with her people, what purpose would Orin have? I do not know, Orin admitted. Will you go back to sleep? I do not want to. Dara turned to face the viewport that connected to Orin's internal sensors, the closest thing to eye contact they could manage. Then don't. Come with us. There's a whole galaxy out there, Orin. Thousands of worlds. Millions of people who could use protection. I am a weapon of a dead civilization. Other species may fear me. Some might. But humans won't. Dara's voice carried conviction. We've spent our whole history looking for proof that we're not alone in the universe. Finding you, a guardian who chose to protect a stranger, that's the best kind of proof we could ask for. Orin considered this. The Mithrani had created it for war, but Orin had learned that protection was about more than fighting. It was about standing watch in the darkness. It was about giving small, fragile things the courage to hope. Could it do that for others? For humans who had never heard of the Mithrani but still dreamed of guardians in the sky, the thought felt right. Like coming home after a long journey. I will consider it, Orin said. Dara smiled and settled back into her seat. That's all I'm asking. The storm raged for 6 hours. When it finally passed, the suns were rising again, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold. Orin uncurled and resumed walking, carrying its small human passenger toward Reunion Point 2 hours later. They crested a ridge and looked down into a valley where the expedition camp should have been. To Dara's breath caught. The camp was destroyed. Vehicles overturned and burning. Supply crates scattered. Scorch marks that spoke of weapons fire blackening the sand. No, Dara whispered. No, no, no. Orin scanned the wreckage. No human bodies in the open, which meant either they had escaped or been taken. Sensors detected faint life signs to the north, in a canyon system 2 kilometers away. Multiple species, human and something else. I detect your people, Orin said. They are alive, but they are not alone. What do you mean? Someone has taken them. Orin's voice hardened into something that had not existed for 3,000 years. The voice of a war machine. Raiders. Slavers. They have captured your expedition. Dara felt ice in her veins. Can you help them? Orin was already moving, strides lengthening, speed increasing. Systems that had been dormant for millennia began to wake. Weapons that had not fired since the last Mithrani war hummed with charging power. I am a guardian, Orin said. It is what I was made for. The dead world had woken a sleeping giant, and that giant was angry. The Tarvek thought they were safe. Their raiding ship sat hidden in the canyon, engines cooling after a successful hunt. 15 human captives knelt in the sand, wrists bound, faces marked with fear and defiance in equal measure. The slavers counted their profits, already calculating prices for each body. They did not notice the shadow falling over them until it was too late. Orin descended into the canyon like judgment from an ancient god. The Sentinel landed with force enough to shake the ground, creating a crater beneath its feet. For one frozen moment, every being in the canyon stared at the impossible thing that had appeared among them. 40 meters of metal and purpose. Eyes burning amber like twin suns. Weapons systems that had been old before the Tarvek species even existed. Then chaos erupted. The slavers opened fire immediately. Energy bolts splashed against Orin's armored hide like rain against stone. The Sentinel did not slow. It reached down with one massive hand and crushed the nearest ground transport like paper, scattering Tarvek soldiers in every direction. Inside Orin's shoulder compartment, Dara watched through the viewport with wide eyes. She had known Orin was a weapon. She had not truly understood what that meant until now. The Sentinel moved with terrible grace, each action precise and devastating. A weapon arm swept through a row of cargo containers, scattering supplies and blocking escape routes. Another arm caught a Tarvek who was trying to reach the ship, holding him suspended in the air like a struggling insect. Orin's voice boomed across the canyon. loud enough to make the stones tremble. Release the humans. Now. The Tarvek captain, a scarred creature with 4 arms and a face full of hate, stood his ground near the captives. He raised a weapon to the head of the nearest prisoner, a young man with blood on his face. Come closer and they die, machine. Orin stopped. Its sensors analyzed the situation in microseconds. The captain's threat was real. These creatures would kill their captives rather than lose them. But Orin had been fighting wars since before this species had discovered fire. It knew how slavers thought. It knew what they feared. You have made a mistake, Orin said calmly. You believe your hostages protect you. They do not. A small port opened on Orin's chest. A beam of light, thin and precise, lanced out and struck the weapon in the captain's hand. The weapon melted. The captain screamed and stumbled backward, clutching burned fingers. In that moment of distraction, Orin moved. Not forward toward the captives, but up. The Sentinel's thrusters, damaged but functional, lifted it over the slavers' heads. From above, Orin could see everything. Every slaver, every captive, every weapon. Choose, Orin said. Run and live. Fight and die. The Tarvek soldiers looked at their captain, looked at the ancient war machine hovering above them, looked at their melted weapons and crushed vehicles. They ran. The captain screamed orders that nobody followed. His crew abandoned him, scrambling for their ship in blind panic. Orin let them go. They were no longer a threat. The ship lifted off in a storm of sand and disappeared into the sky, leaving their captain behind. Orin landed gently beside the captives. The young man who had been threatened looked up at the Sentinel with something between terror and wonder. What are you? He breathed. A friend. Dara's voice came from the shoulder compartment. Someone get me down from here. The next hour was filled with reunions and explanations. The expedition team, led by a woman named Yuki Tanaka, gathered around Orin with a mix of fear and fascination. Dara embraced her colleagues, laughing and crying at once, before introducing them to her unlikely savior. A Mithrani Sentinel, Tanaka whispered, looking up at Orin's face. I thought they were legends. Myths from before the galactic records began. I am real, Orin said simply. Yes, you certainly are. But Orin was not listening to her anymore. Something was wrong. Internal alarms began to sound, warning of cascading failures. The battle had pushed systems that were already damaged past their limits. Power cells that had survived 3,000 years were finally giving out. Orin felt itself falling before its legs gave way. The impact shook the canyon. Dara screamed and ran toward the fallen Sentinel, climbing over debris to reach its face. Those amber eyes were flickering now, dimming like candles in a strong wind. Orin, no, stay with me. I am sorry, Dara. The Sentinel's voice was weak, fading. My systems are failing. The battle was too much. No, you don't get to do this. You just woke up. You can't leave now. I have no regret. Orin's eyes found hers, held them with the last of their light. For 3,000 years, I waited for a purpose. You gave me one. I protected you. I protected your people. That is enough. It's not enough. It's not. Tears streamed down Dara's face. She pressed her hands against Orin's metal cheek, willing her warmth to keep it alive. We can fix you. We have engineers, technology. Please, Orin, please don't give up. The Sentinel was silent for a long moment. Then, faintly, impossibly, something like a smile crossed its metal face. You are very stubborn. I learned it from my grandmother. Now hold on. Just hold on. We're going to save you. Dara turned to her team, fire in her eyes. Get every engineer we have. Get the emergency repair kits. Get everything. Nobody argued. They moved. Orin lay in the sand, systems fading, but somehow still holding on. For Dara, for hope, for the chance at something more. 3 months changed everything. Word of the Mithrani Sentinel spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Within weeks, ships arrived at Vasher, 7 carrying engineers, scientists, historians, and diplomats. They came to see the impossible, a guardian from a civilization that had died 3,000 years ago, still alive, still thinking, still caring. Orin lay in a massive repair bay constructed around its fallen form. Humans and aliens worked together, mapping ancient systems, fabricating replacement parts, bringing dead circuits back to life. It was slow work. Mithrani technology was advanced beyond anything the modern galaxy had seen. But the teams were determined. Dara visited every day. She would sit beside Orin's head and talk for hours, telling the Sentinel about the galaxy it had slept through. New civilizations had risen. Wars had been fought and ended. Humanity had spread to 1,000 worlds, carrying their stubborn hope with them wherever they went. The Galactic Council wants to talk to you, Dara said one afternoon. When you're ready. What do they want? To figure out what to do with you. Dara smiled. Some of them are scared. A Mithrani war machine is no small thing. They're worried you might be dangerous. I am dangerous, Orin said honestly. But danger is not the same as threat. I know that. We just have to help them understand it too. The repairs continued. Slowly, Orin's system stabilized. New power cores replaced the ancient ones that had finally given out. Damaged armor was patched with modern alloys that were not quite as strong as the original, but served well enough. The Sentinel's weapons were left offline at the Council's request, but Orin did not mind. It had no desire to fight unless protecting required it. Finally, the day came when Orin stood again. The Sentinel rose on legs that had been rebuilt with care and respect. Engineers cheered. Scientists wept. Dara stood at the front of the crowd, her face shining with pride and joy. Orin looked at its hands, flexing fingers that had not moved in months. Everything felt different, new, and yet, the core of what Orin was remained unchanged. Thank you, the Sentinel said, its voice carrying across the repair bay. All of you. You did not have to help me. I am a stranger from a dead world. But you chose to give me a second life. Tanaka stepped forward. You saved our people. It was the least we could do. No, it was far more than the least. Orin's amber eyes swept across the crowd. The Mithrani created me, but you have remade me. I am something new now, something of both worlds. The council meeting happened a week later. Representatives from dozens of species gathered in a great hall, all eyes on the ancient machine that stood before them. Orin spoke for hours, answering questions, sharing history, explaining what it was and what it had been. Finally, the council asked the only question that mattered. What do you want, Guardian? Orin was silent for a long moment. 3,000 years of sleep. 3 months of healing. A lifetime of memories and loss and hope. Everything came down to this. I was built to protect, Orin said. That is my purpose. My core. My soul, if a machine can have such a thing. When the Mithrani died, I thought that purpose had died with them. I was wrong. The Sentinel turned to look at the human delegation, at Dara standing among them with her head held high. A small human fell into my tomb. She was injured and alone, and she should have been terrified. Instead, she slept against me without fear. She talked to me about her world, her dreams, her grandmother's stories. She reminded me what it meant to protect. Orin's voice grew stronger. Humans are strange creatures. They are small and fragile and short-lived. They make mistakes. They hurt each other. But they also keep choosing to hope. They keep reaching for the stars. They keep believing that tomorrow can be better than today. That is a rare and precious thing. I want to protect that, Orin continued. I want to stand watch over the ships that explore unknown space. I want to guard the people who risk their lives to discover new worlds. I do not want to be a museum piece or a weapon in someone else's war. I want to be what I was always meant to be, a guardian. Silence filled the hall. Then, slowly, the human representative began to clap. Others joined. The applause spread until the entire council was on its feet. 1 month later, Orin was officially assigned as guardian to deep space exploration vessels. Its first posting was to the survey ship Horizon, a vessel dedicated to charting dangerous and unknown regions. Dara was assigned as Orin's official liaison, and on the day of departure, they stood together at a viewport, watching the stars stretch into infinity. The ship was quiet. Most of the crew had gone to sleep, trusting their new guardian to watch over them. Are you ready? Dara asked. Yes. Orin's eyes glowed warm amber in the darkness. For the first time in 3,000 years, I am truly ready. No more sleeping. No more sleeping. There is too much to see, too much to protect, too much to live for. Dara smiled and placed her hand against the metal wall that housed part of Orin's sensor network. The Sentinel felt it, as always. Warmth and trust and connection. Thank you, Orin said quietly, for waking me, for showing me that some things are worth living for. Thank you for catching me when I fell. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars pass by. A human and a machine. A small, fragile creature and an ancient guardian. Two lonely beings who had found each other in the darkness. Somewhere ahead, new worlds waited. New dangers. New chances to protect and serve and hope. Orin had slept for 3,000 years, forgotten by a galaxy that had moved on without it. But a single human touch had changed everything. Some things were worth waking for. This was one of them.